Hello, what's going on, world? Today I want to talk to you about why I think the Sportster is just an absolutely great bike. When I got my first Harley Davidson, it was actually my first motorcycle ever. I went to the Black Hills Harley Davidson store, and it was a Sunday, they were open, and I started shopping around. For me, I'm 5'6" and I'm not a very big person, so I didn't want a huge bike to start. My friend did reach out to me. He said, "Hey, I'm going to take the motorcycle course, just the beginner course. Would you like to do it with me?" And I said, "I don't have a motorcycle." He said, "Oh, don't worry, they provide one." And I thought, well, why not? I'll go with you. It'll be fun. So by the end of this course, him and I were zigzagging behind each other, making figure eights and stuff. And I basically knew, it was like, all right, I got to get one of these motorcycles. So we went shopping. He had already bought a Sportster, and it was a low. It was a 1200, and I didn't think I needed a 1200 after the training bike was only a 500, and I thought, man, maybe a 1200 would be a little bit big, and I was a little intimidated. And no lie, I kind of thought, man, what would people think about me if I was a biker? What would my family think about me if I bought a motorcycle? I was just intimidated altogether. And I did grow up in Sturgis, South Dakota, though, so I was in love with motorcycles. I always have been, how they get customized, the paint, just the whole scene. I've liked it for a long time. So after taking the course, I was, solidified, like, man, I'm going to become a biker. I know it. And I thought, man, what bike do I really want? And being from Sturgis, it was kind of, maybe I was influenced heavily to get a Harley Davidson. So I went to the Black Hills Harley Davidson and I started looking around. And, I found the 2003 Sportster 883. I sat on quite a few of the other ones, and I really liked how it was the 100th anniversary badge. This is kind of what it looks like. I have a couple other, this is what it looks like right here. Has that anniversary badge, that silver line coming through, and, I've always digged how the Sportster looked. I like the style of it. I like how people customize them. I really have just always loved them. So I thought, man, this is going to be the bike for me. Now, I will say, getting on the 883, and as I already did say, I was intimidated. I was thought, man, maybe a 1200 is not, it's maybe going to be too big for me, and I didn't want to get on something that I was going to be intimidated to ride all the time. But I could tell you, by the time I had actually got onto the interstate on ramp and I started shifting into the fifth gear, I started thinking, maybe I should have gotten the 1200. So I was comfortable enough from the time that I left the Harley dealership to I got on the on ramp, and I thought, man, maybe I should have gotten a 1200. But they wouldn't let me test ride a bike because it was my first ride. And so I thought it was my first bike. So I went for the 883, and almost immediately I thought I would have been more comfortable with the 12, or even more satisfied with the 12. I was comfortable on my 883. So fast forward, I actually owned this bike for 8 years, and I absolutely love it. For the people out there who are saying it's too small, it won't do the job, here's some of the pros and some of the cons that I found after the 8 years of owning this Sportster. And no, I am only 5'6", and at the maximum, I think I was 175 pounds riding this bike. So when you hit potholes, and this is probably the number one suspension, if you're the number one thing to upgrade on a Sportster, if you're going to get one or if you're looking at one, is going to be your suspension. The rear suspension on there, it's not very forgiving. If you hit a big hole, you don't have to be a very large person to bottom it out. If you have a passenger on there, forget about it. You're going to feel it, absolutely. So do your best to maneuver around the big holes, and if you see like a big dip coming in the road, do your best to slow down and take it at an adequate speed. All right. The other thing about this Sportster is, just the power. If you're in the Black Hills, or if you're I grew up in the Black Hills. That's where I did the primary amount of my riding, was in the Black Hills. So if you are going through a hilly area or anything similar to this, if you have a second person on your ride, it's going to be slow. It's not going to be as powerful as you want, But that being said, it is doable. I rode a moped to the top of the tallest peak in Thailand, and it was a 200cc moped. I did it with a girl on the back. It is completely possible. It's just not the most powerful. So if you're more than 175 pounds and you plan on having a person on the back, it's probably going to be who of you to get at least a 1200, and you're definitely going to want to do the suspension. And as well as that, if you're going to be riding for any length of time on this Sportster, it would also be who of you to upgrade your seat. The seat that did come stock on this Sportster, I kept it stock the entire time I had it because it actually had that 100th anniversary emblem on the seat as well, that little tank badge. The same emblem was embroidered on the seat. So I liked that and I wanted to keep it all stock. So I did. And I actually had, my dad paint the tank one year at Sturgis and the fender with a little pirate ship. I'll see if I can't find those pictures and put them here. Man, this thing is a lot of fun. If you plan on just going on short rides, 5 hours or less, I'd say, bobbing around the town, just going to a bar or something with your friends, the Sportster, no doubt about it. I've rode a lot of the Harleys now. The Sportster is one of the best handling Harleys. Although you will get blown around quite a bit in the wind, especially if you're out here on the prairie, it is one of the best handling Harleys. When you get into the tight curves, when it comes into maneuverability or just handling it in and out of a parking spot or even going into the rally, it's nice having a small, nimble bike like the Sportster. However, if you don't have bags, there are the drawbacks too. If you don't have bags on it, I suggest getting at least one of these little swing arm bags that would sit, right here. That way you can have, whether it's a pair of shades, a water, something. It's nice to have a little bit of a storage capacity on your bike. So I definitely threw a little swing arm bag on. That would suffice for me as far as storage capacity. I never went on a long, multiple day trip with my Sportster. The most I really did was packed up my bags and rode it to Sturgis from Hermosa with all of my camping gear so I could kind of get the full biker experience on Sturgis one year. And that was the 75th rally. I put that video up. I'll put the link in description as well. If you're considering getting a Sportster, I really think that as a first motorcycle, this was awesome. I was totally happy with it for the first 8 years. It had enough power to get me going around. Let's kind of look at those specs right there. Some of the specs right here, top speed 93. I think that is either my speedometer was wrong or I pushed my Sportster very hard, because I believe I've hit at least 100 on my Sportster. Maybe I was going downhill. Dry weight 518 pounds. So again, being 175 pounds, I'm not a big dude, 5'6". It felt great for me. It definitely scooted me around at a fast speed. It's got a good amount of get up and go, but it wasn't overpowering. All right, so 47.5 horsepower, almost 47.6 horsepower. And, this is a basic engine. As far as upkeep on this engine, as long as you get the oil changed and do basic services on this bike can last 100,000 miles. Absolutely. Don't let anybody tell you differently. This engine is rock solid. This was the last year, '03. It was the last year that they actually had the solid mount engine, and the very next year they did the rubber mount engine on these Sportsters. And I can tell you out of first-hand experience, the difference was substantial. If my Sportster was in neutral and running, you could see the tire, the shake on that thing was real. If you were going 95 on your Sportster, it was, wow, you knew you were speeding, absolutely. But it was fun, it was nostalgic, it felt like you were on some kind of old 1930s machine, even though it was new. So I loved that about the Sportster. After about 8 years of ownership, I did start getting to a point where, okay, I'm comfortable riding. A lot of my friends were now onto their second bikes and more powerful engines. They all had wives at this point, so they needed more powerful engines, better suspension and stuff. So these guys were getting into the Fat Bobs and the Super Glides and the Super Street Glides and whatnot. So I've test rode quite a few motorcycles by now. I didn't I don't necessarily care for spoke rims. I wanted to get out of that. My original Sportster there, the front tire was very skinny on that thing, and I wanted to get an upgrade. I also was thinking about getting a windshield after riding a Sportster with a windshield and getting the brake on that baby. I thought, man, this is way more comfortable, especially bugs in the summer. I do not enjoy getting hit in the face with bugs. That's a familiar thing with all motorcyclists if you have rode with an open-faced helmet. And I thought, man, I'd get a window on here, and ultimately I wanted some kind of bags because I like having the little swing arm bag. I wanted more storage capacity. And after several years of riding, I've been now thinking about, man, I want to go on a multiple day ride. I want to do a longer ride. I actually want to maybe get into some touring, even if it's not extreme touring, cross country touring. I want to do a little bit of riding, and I want to go somewhere. I just want to ride, baby. So yeah, I was looking for several upgrades, but last but not least, the bike that I had straight bars. So I was always leaning forward just slightly, and that caused a little pinch in the back of my neck, which if I was riding for 5 hours or more, it was very uncomfortable. And that was like, okay, let's go ahead and try to upgrade the handlebars. But then every time I did try it and I talked to multiple people about it, they'd said, well, you have to extend your cables, and that it would cost me more than the bike is worth. So I wanted to do fat front tire, which was new forks, triple trees, and everything, and that was more than the bike was worth. I wanted to put at least some mini ape handlebars on there. That was more than the bike was worth because of the cables. And lastly, I was getting the fork seals replaced, and I was kind of having some problems with a Harley Davidson in Colorado, saying that they were damaged, and I had to do it twice in a row. And I said, well, if they got damaged, it was from your shop, and it was just kind of a pain. And so I ended up selling that after they replaced the fork seals for the second time last spring. So I went a full year without I went a full year without motorcycle ownership. Last year in Sturgis, I test rode the Softail Standard and the 1200 Iron, the 2021. And I did the Fat Bob. I did quite a few motorcycles last year on the Harley Davidson test ride. And I thought, all right, well, definitely I'm going to get into something else next year. And I definitely have. Stay tuned for what I got into next week. Hopefully, if I can get it because of the weather. But if you're considering this motorcycle, the 883 versus a 1200, if you have any kind of riding experience, whether that is dirt bikes or whether that is street bikes, any kind of riding experience, and you're looking to get into a motorcycle, but you want it to be a Sportster, consider getting the 1200. The 883 is enough for me. Like I said, the 175 pounds, I can ride this baby alone all day long and be completely satisfied with how fast it goes. 90 something on a motorcycle can kill you all day long. So don't get it twisted. As long as you're not loading this thing down with weight, this little Sportster can tow you around for quite some time and be satisfying. That, if you are more experienced, if you're a little bit heavier than 175 and you're still looking at the Sportster because you like the style, maybe you want to get into a custom build of one, definitely go for the 1200. After riding the 1200 several times, I really was thinking about upgrading my engine, but again, that was going to be at least around $1,000. So And then if you get into it and all the guys, you know, you want to do cams and then whatever, and it's not just stage 1, 2, and then you got to go 3, 4, then you break it all apart. It just gets so expensive after a certain time. When you can look at the used market and get one that's already 1200 and possibly a stage 1 already at a 1200, it's going to be substantially more power than even a, you know, a stage 2 Sportster 883, even though if you punch out the 883 properly, it will be more powerful than the stock 1200. So there's things to consider here. The, you know, the Sportster is highly customizable. If you do get the 883, you could always one thing about getting an 883 is, and most people, at least when I watch videos on YouTube about this, they never say, if you get an 883 and then you upgrade the engine yourself, you will, the VIN number on the bike is still 883, so you pay less in insurance on that bike than if you were to buy a 1200 VIN, because then you have to pay for the insurance on the 1200, obviously. So that's one little hack for the Sportster. If you're going to get one, you're thinking about getting one, you want it to be a 12 for sure, but you're good with the garage and maybe you can do that kind of stuff for yourself and save some money. There's awesome kits out there through like SNS and a bunch of other places sell kits that you can build out your engine for on the 883. And, you know, this bike is so fun. It really, really is. So if you're considering getting a Sportster as a first-time bike, I highly suggest doing it. I really think that, you know, you'll be more satisfied with this than like a Honda Shadow or even a Suzuki Boulevard. Just be sheerly out of the Harley Davidson kind of family. I think you will love having it. When people do see it and they see it's a Harley, they're always a little bit more excited. You know, they're always, oh, you got a Sportster, huh? You know, and of course, all the Harley guys are going to be then talking to you as well. So really, bottom line, guys, motorcycling is motorcycling. It doesn't matter what brand that you get. If you're interested in riding this spring, I highly encourage it. I can't wait to see you guys out on the road. I hope you guys liked this video. If you found anything I said here useful, definitely hit that like button. Consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys next week.